Good evening, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another edition of Sana Online. And tonight, our topic is going to be negotiation for musicians. And I believe we called it negotiation chops for musicians. So tonight, we're going to dig into the art of negotiation and just talk about how you can navigate the world of contracts and especially dealing with gigs and dealing with the money associated with gigs. I'm super excited to also have Darian Douglas on the call with us tonight. And he is a co-founder of Second Line Arts. And I guess in the past, I've been doing these by myself, but tonight we got the master of the deal himself, Darian Douglas. But yeah, let's just go. Let's get right into it here. Just a quick little heads up for everyone who's new to us tonight. I represent an organization called Second Line Arts Collective, and we're a 501c3 founded in 2017 here in New Orleans, Louisiana. And our tagline is education from recess to record deals. We have a couple programs that we run here at the Second Line Arts that fall under our umbrella. We have the Sana Music Workshop, which is a group of programs that specialize in arts and entrepreneurship training for young musicians between 14 and 25 years old. We also host a program called Little Stompers, which is a program designed for our younger audience. We do family classes for the ages 1 through 5 here in New Orleans. And we also do community concerts and school concerts where we bring New Orleans music to schools and share the love of music and try to, get a younger audience to love and appreciate music and New Orleans culture. My name is Gregory Ajid. For any of y'all who do not know who I am, I see we have someone else in the call here. I'm going to let them in real quick. Excuse me. I am a clarinetist, saxophone player, band leader, sideman, educator. I've played with Delphio Marcellus, Michael Bublé, the Gregory Ajid Quartet, and I'm generally a freelance musician. However, these days I'm feeling less and less like a freelance musician and more like an educator who plays gigs every blue moon. I've been performing professionally since 2009, and I've taught at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. I currently teach at Tulane, and I am a co-founder of Second Line Arts Collective. Derry, do you want to introduce yourself? We got a slide up here with you.
What's up, y'all? My name is Darian Douglas. I am a drummer, band leader, sideman, educator, and also the executive director and co-founder, along with my one of my best friends and smartest dude I know, Gregory Ajid, here for Second Line Arts Collective. Been performing professionally since around 2004. That's when I did like my first tour. But I've been playing gigs, man, since middle school. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Kill it. Awesome. So, Darian, to me, when we came up with the topic for negotiation, this was actually recommended by one of our former students. And while, I would consider myself to know a little bit about negotiation through my professional experience, but Darian has negotiated so many contracts and deals and events for Second Line. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to go ahead and get Darian with real world experience in negotiating. And I would say to all y'all, be careful. Don't get into a negotiation with Darian. It's yeah. Well, after this call, you'll be ready for Darian. How about that? So what I want to do is just share just a couple minutes of my take with y'all, and then I'm going to turn it over for Darian to share what he's got. And yeah, so pretty much just this. I'm just going to call this Gregory's take. That's it. So first of all, y'all, everything can be negotiated. Y'all are musicians. We live in the wild west of the world, and so everything can be negotiated for the most part in this industry. I want to talk about building value. I also want to address a win-win mentality, and you can always say no. To me, that's kind of what negotiation really comes down to. But Darian is going to add a lot more sauce on that. First of all, I wanted to just go ahead and define a negotiation. What is a negotiation? So first and foremost, a negotiation is a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. And there's a key point in that definition right there. We're aimed at reaching an agreement. And sometimes when I have, having been a teacher for many years, and I have a lot of students, and a lot of times questions come up about numbers and how much should I get paid for this and that and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to really emphasize the point here. Like, you can only truly be having a negotiation if you are trying to reach an agreement, right? If you're making ridiculous requests, my question to you is, are you actually trying to reach an agreement, or are you just trying to just do your thing? I'm not really sure. But just again, I really want to reinforce the idea here that we're trying to come to some type of agreement amongst parties. When do I negotiate? And I just want to emphasize this point, as I'm 37 years old now, and no one broke these rules down for me as a young musician. No one said, hey, you can negotiate this, you can't negotiate that. I've learned along the way that everything is negotiable, and I have found myself in compromising situations because I did not have that information at my disposal. So this is what I'm going to share with you, my life experience that has brought me to that point. So you can negotiate almost anything. And I want to emphasize too that negotiation is a means of communication, right? In life, we're always negotiating things. We're negotiating, we're compromising. I don't mean compromising in a negative way, but we're always choosing between certain things. So, between people, a negotiation is simply a form of communication. Daria wants to go see Herbie Hancock play, and I want to go see Lady Gaga. We got to negotiate. We got to work it out. So you all may have some experience in negotiating in outside of the business world, and I just want to emphasize the point that I'm also thinking about siblings and stuff. Oh man, I remember when we had like one video game, and I wanted to play Tony Hawk, and he wanted to play Legends of Zelda. Anyways, we had to negotiate. So this is my golden rule for negotiation and when to accept a deal. And this is something I've learned over the years, and this is just my golden rule for myself. Only accept a deal that you feel comfortable knowing that someone else may have gotten a better deal, right? So you always want to negotiate so that you have agreed on a price that you feel comfortable with. And the person playing, I'm just going to use saxophone as an example, the person playing saxophone is making twice as much as you, and you need to know in your heart that whatever deal you negotiated was the best deal for you, right? So always feel that when someone hits you up for a gig and says, hey, this gig pays $50, and you think it sounds funky, it might be funky, But again, just my golden rule is always negotiate for what you're comfortable accepting. Accept a deal that's fair for you, and make sure your deal is fair, knowing the person next to you might be getting better or worse. Y'all, on the bandstand, again, this is the Wild West, y'all. And I know we deal with fairness, and we want to exist in this like ideal world where we think everyone's getting paid the same, and that's not true. And I'm going to go to my story time in just a second, but I want to reinforce the idea that no is your superpower. You never have to take a deal that you don't want to take, and no is your superpower. And I'll get to no in just a second. So my story time is this, and I learned this lesson a long time ago with a friend of mine, and he was a friend, a colleague, and actually Darian's part of this story too. But I was hired to play some gigs. And this cat called me and asked me to play 10 gigs at elementary schools throughout the city of New Orleans. And this was like a homie of mine, and was like, hey, I got $500 to play these 10 gigs. We're going to play one at 10 in the morning and then one at noon every day. And they're just going to be like 30-minute concerts, and it'll be super chill, super easy, pay you $500 for the week. And I was like, man, that's $50 a concert. That sounds a little weird. But I just remember telling myself, like, yeah, this is my dude, this is my good friend. I've hired him on my gigs. He's taking care of me. So I remember showing up to like the 8th gig or the Thursday of this week of gigs, and I was actually on the phone with Darian. And Darian was like, "Oh man, I love performing for this organization, man. You know, when I do this string of gigs, man, it pays my rent for 2 months." And I was like, "What do you mean it pays your rent for 2 months?" I was like, I was taken back. I was kind of shocked, and I was like, "Man, your rent's not $100 a month, man. That's crazy." So that's kind of when I realized, like, I was like, "Holy shit!" You know, I accepted a deal that was not good, and that was a wake up call for me. In that, when something feels weird, it probably is weird. And on that gig, I was making $50 a gig, and the drummer was making like 350 or $400 a gig. And the cat had just kind of, I just, you know, I just had never really comprehended that here in New Orleans, people would be like offering people weird prices and trying to game people with again the price for a gig. So I learned an important lesson that day, that if it sounds funny, it probably is funny. And then I also learned the lesson that you always have to negotiate a price that you're comfortable with, knowing that someone else on the bandstand might be getting paid more than you. So you know what? If I would have negotiated $300 a gig and the guy next to me was making 350, I probably would have been like, you know what? That feels fair to me. So I negotiated that rate, and that's where I'm at. And believe me, y'all, I was pissed. I was pissed. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning. I was about to go play at an elementary school, and I was like, really, I was like livid. But it was an important lesson, a very important lesson for me. I just want to, what are some situations that you can negotiate? Yo, every gig is negotiable. Job offers, buying a car, buying a house, relationships are negotiations, team projects, bands. Y'all need to understand how to negotiate and come to a conclusion. What are some things that you can negotiate? Y'all can negotiate pay, vacation time, healthcare, time commitments, responsibilities, financial commitment, retirement, benefits. Anything that you can think of, you can negotiate it. It's always up for grabs. Bringing value. All right, this is something that I want to reinforce for all musicians. We have to bring value to the table as musicians. And you know, just we have a couple cats in the house. I'm a clarinet player, we have a saxophone player in the house, we got a trombone player in the house, we have a drummer in the house. And we should always be building value. And what I mean by that is we should be building our own internal value, and we should also be building value of how other people perceive us, right? You know, again, we want to build self-worth. We want to build a good relationship with ourselves, but we also want other people to see us as valuable. And that's like, again, like, it's like, hey, what does it mean to have Beyonce play a gig versus, you know, I don't know, someone who went to Juilliard and sings really well. You know, everyone is bringing a certain value. There are certain things that can bring us value in the eyes of a negotiation a lot of times. And money being one of them, right? If you're, as a musician, if I'm hiring you for a situation, or if I'm going to go be hired for a job or any type of deal, and I'm going to hire, let's just say Darian right now, what is the value Darian brings to my organization? Does Darian bring money? Does Darian bring an audience, a reputation, ticket sales, ideas, a draw, reliability, dependability? Does he bring resources, a personality? Is he able to fix problems, a musical ability? And all of these things build our value. And I want to emphasize the point that just playing saxophone or clarinet or trumpet or any of these instruments really well, a lot of times it's not going to be the only thing that brings value. And I want to emphasize, like, we want to be irreplaceable. And irreplaceable is like harder and harder to come by these days, because the reality is, if you don't like the way the saxophone player plays or whatever, you can just fire them and replace them. But can you replace the saxophone player that has the car, that books the gigs, and whose rich aunt pays everyone $1,000 a gig? You can't fire that person. That person's irreplaceable. Can you fire the lead singer who has 7 million Instagram followers and is a side person in your gig, but draws an audience of 1,000 people to your gig? Can you fire that person and still have a band? I'm not sure. So again, I really want to emphasize the point that we should always be building value for our own personal relationship with ourselves, but also building value in the eyes of others, because that's going to be your leverage when you're negotiating. A win-win. Whenever we're negotiating, we want to have a win-win. And the intent of a win-win is we want to negotiate to get the best deal for you while your counterpart is also satisfied with the deal, right? If Darian's hiring me for a gig, I want to get the best price that I can get, and Darian also wants to pay me a price that he feels satisfied with. When you're entering any negotiation, put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? If you're looking for a job, if you're looking for a gig or anything like that, ask yourself, what does this person need, and what value can I add to your organization, right? When I was trying to get hired as a teacher, I was like, look, y'all, like, not only do I have all this performance experience, I've played with Michael Bublé, I've like made all these CDs, but I've also started a nonprofit. I also do all this social media stuff. I video edit. I know how to do all these different things that set me apart from the teacher who only knows how to teach jazz, you know? And so all of a sudden, like, I'm bringing all this value to the organization. Not only am I being a jazz instructor, but I can be a video editor. I can be how to run a nonprofit, how to do social media, how to perform in front of, 20,000 people. Like, there's all these experiences that I bring to the table that make us unique. So what value can I bring to your organization? Then the question you ask yourself is, what do I need to make this a good deal for me? Right? And have some dialogue, how can we both walk out of here feeling good about our deal? And it's like, I think it's good to use verbiage like that. Hey, look, I really want to take this gig, and I understand you're on a budget. Can we come to some type of deal that I need to make this, and I know you don't have that kind of money, but can we come to this kind of compromise? Because I want to do this. I want you to win. I want you to feel good about this. I want to feel good about this. Saying things like that, it builds trust, it builds a good relationship amongst people, and we want to walk out having a win-win situation. All right, this is my last slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Darian. The power of no. Y'all, this is my opinion now, but the only leverage you have in a negotiation is if you're willing and able to say no. That's all you have, right? If you can't say no to the opportunity, you don't have any leverage, right? I'll say that one more time because it's so important. If you are not able to say no to a situation, you have no leverage in a negotiation. A couple of years ago, I was trying to negotiate a salary at my job, and yeah, I ended up walking away from the job because they did not offer me what I wanted and what I thought I was worth. And so I walked away instead of taking something I was not happy with. And, I didn't want to build up resentment for myself by taking a situation that was not good for me. And at the same time, like, I wanted to show them that I was serious, that this is what I need. And if you can't meet me there, I can't take this job. And so just be willing. You have to be able to say no to opportunities to have leverage. That's it. If you can't say no, you can't negotiate. You got nothing over the other person. They can just tell you what you're going to take, and that's it. FU money. That's the technical term. It's FU money. And it sounds like exactly what it is, right? And so I would encourage all of y'all to save some money in the bank. And that's going to give you flexibility to turn down bad deals, right? If you have no money in the bank, if you need to make $400 by next week and someone offers you a really bad deal, you have to take it because you need that money. But if you have FU money, I feel like it should be like an infomercial, like, ladies and gentlemen, get FU money with Gregory Ajid. But if you have money in the bank saved up, it'll give you, again, leverage. You don't have to take bad opportunities. And that leverage can exist in different things. You can have a day job. You can have a rich aunt, uncle, mom, dad. Maybe they pay your bills. I don't know. Maybe you've worked a job for 10 years and you saved all this money, and now you don't have to play the horrible gig for the monster bar owner that sucks and doesn't want to pay you a fair wage, and you have that ability to say no. Yeah, always create leverage for yourself by being financially independent and being irreplaceable. And the last thing I added, Keegan was talking, and I was like, holy crap, this is my last piece of advice. Y'all get everything in writing. Everything needs to be in writing all the time. He said, she said, whatever, it's never going to work. You need to have numbers in writing with every little detail. If they said you're going to take the last Friday of every month off, it better be in writing, because if it's not in writing, you're not getting it. And like if you're having a phone conversation with someone, immediately send them an email right after. Like if Darian and I are on the phone and we agree on something and we didn't do it in writing, just right after say, hey, Darian, it was great talking to you on the phone. I'm super excited for doing this gig with you for $300. And the load in time is 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and we're going to have a break at this time. Like you can outline all the details you talked about, email him. And if he emails you back, that's like pretty much an agreement to the deal. It might not be official as a contract, but again, you need to have stuff in writing. So always get a contract, get an agreement going, and get everything in writing, because your word, it's not really valid in the court of law, and it doesn't give you leverage. Again, leverage, that's what we want all the time. All right, that's the end of Gregory's hot take. And that's what I got in negotiation. But now I'm going to turn it over to the person who actually negotiates and really knows how to negotiate. And I'm going to give it over to Darian Douglas.
Yo, okay, y'all. I got these slides, but I think what I want to actually do is maybe since there's so few of us, we can address the three different negotiating concerns so I can directly help you with what you need. So one person is already given us one scenario of trying to book a gig, but for more money. So versus like trying to book a gig for yourself versus trying to book a gig for a whole band, which is gonna, what Greg and I have both done this type of thing where, okay, I gotta, if a band leader calls me and asks me to play a gig for, $500, that's one negotiation versus if I need to reach out to a venue and try to negotiate $10,000 for a band, right? So if you have if the other two of you have something, I want to hear it now. Then we can address it. I'll take some notes and then we'll get into it.
If
So
y'all
now,
want to drop a question directly in the chat, or if you guys want to, if anyone feels comfortable unmuting themselves, you're welcome to just ask a question. We can just have a conversation too.
yeah, talk to me. Y'all gonna talk to me? Put a thumbs up or a thumbs down at least. Help me out. All right. I'll in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and get on the first one. So, all right. So this is basically how I approach all negotiations. Is the first thing that you need to do if we're negotiating the money, then you need to know your price. You know, I'm not really going off these slides, Greg, but you got because you kind of covered everything, man. Honestly, you gave them all the foundation that they need. But you need to have a price in mind. So, for instance, for a single gig as a side man or a side person, you need to know, all right, I don't play gigs for less than X amount. And that can be, depending on when you are in your career, that could be $50 or that can be $10,000. You know what I mean? Because trust me, if someone calls Lady Gaga, she knows I don't show up for less than X. The same way if someone calls me or Greg or someone called the younger version of me when I when I was in my 20s, it's like, oh, okay, back then, yeah, I might have played a $50 gig. But if someone calls me today for a $50 gig, I very politely say, no, I can't, I can't make that for a very varying amount of reasons, for me in my own personal life. I live in New Jersey, so if I need to drive to New York City to play a gig, it costs me money. I have to pay a toll. I got to park my car. And then if you want me to bring drums, that's like then you got to pay me a cartage fee. Like it's like all of these things that need to happen for me to show up to that gig. Then you need me to learn music. That's like hours of my time. And so I kind of calculate all of that stuff and make my decisions from there. Okay. And so all of that's important. So if you're calling a venue, all right, it's like, all right, I got this band. My band's awesome. And the venue's like, okay, cool. And you're like, we play klezmer music and there's 15 of us. And so the budget for this band is going to be $5,000. And the venue's like, great. So how many people follow you online? You're like, we have 100 followers. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, that's interesting because our venue holds 1,500 people. Do you think you can get 1,500 people in here? See, the negotiation is going to fall apart because you already can't give this venue what they need. They need to feel comfortable that they're going to make money. The only thing that most musicians are thinking about is their own pockets. It's like, you need to pay me to show up to your venue. Like that, who cares if you don't have fans, if you don't have any kind of following, you know? Whereas a person like Greg, he's got like 20,000 followers on social media. And so his leverage would be a little bit different, you know, and the venue might ask different questions. So it's like, okay, you have 20,000 followers, but how many are active followers? You know, like then they might do a little bit more investigation into Greg's situation because they're now interested, you know, like, oh, some people might show up to this gig, you know, but how many? We don't know. So then now they might go look at each video and say, oh, okay, each video, he's got an average of 500 people liking and commenting on the video. So his actual following might be closer to 500 than 20,000. So you all of these types of things you have to be aware of before you go into the negotiation, because you might not be ready to be paid $5,000 for a gig. Maybe your band should be paid $500 for a gig. And it's not because your band isn't great. It's just because no one knows about your band. And so maybe the venues you need to play are smaller venues. You know, maybe you need to play a 20-seat room and the band leader doesn't make any money. Like this is like the reality of the situation. It's like, okay, maybe for the first year, we're going to focus on building our audience in a whole lot of different ways, but I'm not going to make any money. And I'm going to negotiate every venue so that my band gets paid. Like this is the reality of music. You might have to be a busboy or be a doctor or whatever it is you do in the daytime, but at night you're just pushing for your band, and it's going to take time, you know. And you can practice your negotiation skills too along the way, because each venue you play, hopefully every 6 months or every 3 months, gets a little bit bigger because you have a bigger following. So now first you start at 500, which is an easy negotiation, right? I want $500 for my 11-piece band, my 11-piece klezmer band. And they're like, cool, that's a good deal for the venue. And you're like, they're definitely gonna make their money back because they only need maybe 40 people in the room or 20 people in the room to do that. But the more and more and more you get, you know, you need to be aware of these things. Like you need to be able to tell venues how many people generally show up to your shows, right? So they might ask you questions like, okay, all right, I'm going to give you this $500, but how many people showed up to your last 30 shows? Maybe you haven't played 30 shows before. Like all of these little details really, really matter when it comes to negotiations. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
And I have a comment too. I'll jump in here real quick. I like that first line, overcoming the fear of asking for money. I'm curious, like, can you talk about, like, do you have any advice on how to handle these like awkward conversations with people?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
do you do them in person, email? Like what kind of advice do you have for talking numbers with someone?
First of all, the first thing you got to remind yourself is that everyone is a human. They're just a human. And if you're nervous, I guarantee you they're nervous too. Nobody wants to talk about money. What's up, Julia? Like no one wants to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Julia don't want to talk about it. Greg don't want to talk about it. But we have to talk about it. And so the easiest way to overcome the fear is to talk to everybody about money. And so then it's just normal. It's just like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, you talk to your friends about money. How much money did you make on that gig? Oh, I made this much. And then you start, you practice like that. You talk to your mom about money. How much money is the light bill? Like you just really get in there in just to get it off of your shoulders. Because the money conversation is going to come up. It just is. It's very important, and it's going to come up because everyone, the venue or whoever paying you they want to pay you, like Greg said, the least amount of money as possible, and then you want to get paid the most amount of money as possible. And where you're going to come is you're going to come somewhere in the middle. That's what I do. I just talk about money all the time. And if you have a price, like for instance, we sell Little Stompers concerts here at Second Line. They cost $1,300 for a 45-minute concert. I know what my price is. So in negotiations, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll allow them to get to my price. So I always give a higher price. Sometimes they just pay it, and that's a win-win for us. So I might say something like this, "Oh, how much is it?" I'm not too crazy high because I don't want to say 2,500 because that's crazy. But I'll say something like, "Oh, 1,500." And they'll like, usually it's like, "Oh, that's kind of for 45 minutes." Like we'll kind of go back and forth, and then we'll make some concessions, and I'll say, "Oh, well, what were you thinking? Like, how do you feel? Like, what's the maximum amount that you are willing to pay?" And they might say something like, "Oh, well, for 45 minutes, maybe like 1,400." And I say, "Oh, no problem." And I'll say, "Oh, for 1,400, maybe we can do two sets. How do you feel about that?" And that way, now we're both giving. We're doing a push and pull. I got a little bit more than I wanted. Sometimes they walk me down to 13, but I know I can't go any lower than 1,300 for that price. And I just say, okay, because I want to pay my cats a certain amount of money. And then also Second Line needs to make a little bit of money on the deal too. So I can't go below 13. I know that. And like Greg said, if it needs to go below 13, either I'm walking away, or I'm gonna suggest that we guarantee some future exchange. For instance, I can say, okay, well, if I gotta do this one for 900, right? Okay, but can you guarantee me that we're gonna do 7 more of these at 1,200? Because I still didn't hit my price, but if we're gonna do 8 concerts total, and we can kind of get it closer. Now we're talking. Now we're dancing. And oftentimes I'll say, listen, if we can do that, if I get a grant, I'll call you back, and then I'll reduce the price as low as I possibly can. See, we're doing a dance. It's not like me just being like, this is what I need, no matter what. I'm trying to dance with you the whole time. Like, okay, and usually that works. Sometimes it doesn't work, and they just say, you know what, we're not interested right now. And I say, okay, no problem. But if I get a situation where, like, I try to keep the relationship alive and build like a genuine relationship with the people that I'm talking to. And another trick is when you're dealing with venues and people, try not to only have one person that you know at the company, because people get fired, people change jobs. And so like if you only know one person at X venue, and then they leave, and now you got to start back over. But if you know 5 people, and all 5 of those people say, "Man, you know what? Greg is a great guy, man. Like we do business together, and he's supposed to, like, it's sold out every time." They're gonna be very excited to work with you. And guess what? That person who went to the new venue or wherever else they're going, they're gonna remember you. They might have a Christmas party at their new company, or something going on that requires music or your services. And they're going to call you because they're going to remember working with you. It was easy, and negotiating with you didn't feel too weird. It didn't feel too pushy. It's like when the guy who knocks on your door trying to sell you like windows, like that's what happens at my house. And like they come in, and some guys are super pushy, and some people are just, "Oh man, no problem. Like, you're not interested, no problem. I'll come back. I'll come back next year. Maybe you'll need windows then." That's the guy that I'm going to talk to versus the guy's like, "Hey man, my windows are the best windows. Man, you should want them right now." So, but yeah, that's my 2 cents on that, Greg.
I want to double down on what you said too. Like, again, this is like a business of relationships, and people are always playing. I'm going to use the term musical chairs. Hey, hey, hey! But people are playing musical chairs with their jobs, and just here in New Orleans, like the booker at venue A may in 1 year now be the general manager of this hotel. And then in 2 years from now, that person is going to be the person who runs the Superdome or something. You never know. Like people are always changing jobs. And
Yeah.
so when you have one good relationship with someone, you never know where they're going to be at a future point in time and how they can help you in your career. And these these negotiations and these like interactions with people, they're going to go a long way when people, they might not remember what you said to them, but they're always going to remember how you made them feel, right? And that's like a good thing to remember with like interacting with your audience, with fans, with again, relatives and people you're doing deals with. They're not going to remember how the negotiation went. They're just going to remember, oh, that guy was cool, or that guy was a jerk. That's all they're going to remember, or how the music made them feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I'm curious too. Like, I know a lot of people here, it's funny now that you and I are like in our late 30s and we've been doing this for like many, a significant amount of time. And so it's funny that like I feel like a lot of people may hear this and they're like, oh, well, that's Greg. Greg plays with Michael Bublé, so it must be really easy for Greg to get deals. Or Darian, Darian's been playing with Bria Bria Skomberg for the last 15 years. And I saw Darian, he's a drum endorsee of what are the drums? Can
Canopy.
yeah. So it's like, Darian's got it easy, but I'm curious if you can talk about like your early 20s and like the types of like gigs that you would take to elevate your leverage to the point that you're at now.
Yeah. I mean, in my early 20s, man, I played any gig that anyone called me to play. And the reason I did that was because I was trying to learn to play music. And along the way, I learned that people were paying me not that much money. I learned that. But in those years, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna accept this for now. I'm gonna take a mental note because I just need the opportunities right now. But you do turn a corner at some point, and you're just like, all right, now I have the experience. I can play my instrument very well, and so now I need to get paid a certain amount of money to do my job. In that's just a personal decision that it's gonna happen for each person because you are a business and you have to think of yourself like that, because like Coca-Cola, they sell their Coke for a certain price. And that's just what it is. Like you cannot walk in a gas station and say, I would like to pay 25 cents for this Coca-Cola today. They're going to tell you to get out. You don't have enough money. And so you need to think of yourself the same way at a certain point. So once you feel like you got what you need to get, you got it together, you paid your dues for long enough, then you set your price based on that. Now, you need to be sure you recognize what's happening in the market too and what your actual value is, because that's rough. So if you come to a place like New York and they can call me or Jeff Tane Watts or Brian Blade or name any phenomenal drummer, Chris Dave, like I have to be aware of that and say, okay, I might not be at a name recognition level of Chris Dave. Just like a 20-year-old moving to New York is not at the same name recognition as me because he or she hasn't been here long enough and hasn't played with enough people to prove what they can do. So their prices are way different than mine. They might play in coffee shops. I did that before. I don't do it now. They might play weddings. I did that before. I don't do it now. Like that kind of stuff. So in just the same way, like Blade, he's playing with, the who's who, the greatest masters of all time. I haven't done that on a consistent basis like him. So there's levels to it, and you have to be aware of the level that you are and be very honest with yourself, and say, okay, well, if me asking for $1,000 a night, if I'm 22, without the accolades and all of the stuff, it's not gonna work out for me. So you just kind of got to know where you are and self-evaluate. and also ask your friends, because you might get on a high profile gig and they don't pay you well. That happens in this business. And so what you got to do is you got to speak up for yourself and you got to say, hey, listen, like I need X amount of dollars on this or I'm out of here. Like in a nice way, and then the band leader will decide if they're going to pay you or if they're just going to hire somebody else. But you don't settle if you know that you should be getting paid more money. Yeah.
Can I add to that too? Like, just you need to have some end game for the gig. Like, let's say again, just the who's the biggest artist in the world? Lady Gaga or something like that. Lady Gaga calls you and says, "Hey, I got this gig and it's going to pay $50. Do you take it?" I don't know, but while it's a horrible rate, it might be worth it for you to play with Lady Gaga for 3 months for $50 a gig. Maybe that will build you enough leverage for the longevity of your career after that. So now all of a sudden you're the artist that played with Lady Gaga and no one knows how much you got paid, but now you can use that as leverage to build your career. And so like I like what you were saying too about like a dance, right? Like negotiations are a dance. And so sometimes at every point in your career too, like maybe at this point, money is the focal point of like what's most necessary of playing a gig. But maybe at a different point in your career, exposure is actually the most important part, or experience, or whatever it might be. So, I know we talked a lot about money here, but just know it's like totally cool to, again, play with, let's say, I don't know, Brad Meldow calls someone for a gig and he's like, it's $50. And like, are you going to turn down the opportunity to play with Brad Meldow? I don't know. But and it's totally cool to say no. Some people will say no. Some people will say yes. But that's why I feel like it's really important to go back to like making the decision that's best for you. And if you feel like it's not a good decision, you have every right to say no to it.
Yeah, 100%. Like somebody like John Baptiste calls you to be on the show. Like there's going to be a lot of eyeballs. So at that point, it's not all about money. But you also have to ask yourself, am I the type of person that leverages, do I have really good interpersonal relationship skills? Because if the answer is no, then, and you're not getting paid, like it's not going to help you at all. So you just got to be so self-aware and say, okay, I have really good interpersonal relationship skills. I'm going to go on that show and everyone's going to know me at the end of the night. And I'm going to get so many contacts that the money is meaningless to me. You know what I mean? So you just really got to be self-aware, like on a very, very high level.
Julia
Julia,
comments only if he's making $50. And that was one of my things too, is like you have to negotiate a deal that you feel comfortable knowing that the leader or anyone else on the bandstand's making more than you. Like you just need to negotiate that rate.
yeah, let me tell you something about music right now. Everyone is getting paid something different. That is just how music works. If you are getting paid a rate that you agreed to and you're upset about it, it is your problem. And it is your problem because you agreed to it. And if you're upset, you should be upset with yourself. That's just what it is. Now, you can renegotiate on the next gig. So, and do that and say, hey, man, I can't play no more gigs for that rate. I love you. I just can't do it. My hamsters cannot eat at that rate, whatever it is. You just got to be honest with people. And I find that if you talk to people face to face, eye to eye, it's all usually going to be cool because they're going to work it out. They're going to find a way because they want you around. Just, don't be a jerk about it, but like you should be strong and straightforward and be like, look, man, this not working for me. That's the hard part of it. But if you just, hey, don't F me, man. Don't do that. People generally just won't, but they will try you. They will, because like you got to remember, this is a business. This is not personal. It's just a business. Their job is to pay you as little as possible, the same way that Google and Apple. If Apple and Google were paying their employees as much as they could, they wouldn't have all that cash in the bank right now. They got so much cash. Think about it. No one's getting paid at Apple the amount they should be getting paid. That's just not how it works. So you got to remember that it's not personal. This is business. I just need to ask for what I need, and your needs will change over time too. You might start out getting paid 500 a night, but then 10 years from now, it might be like, you know what I need? Because now I got 6 kids and 3 baby mamas. So now I need $1,000 a night or whatever it is. I got 12 dogs and 6 cats. You know,
That's when the band leader says, you know what, actually, I'm going to hire that 21-year-old who just graduated from Juilliard for $500 or $400 or $300 a night.
yep,
That's why
exactly.
I feel like this stuff is like just so important because it's like, again, like no one really talks about this reality in the music business and it's real.
Yeah. Young people are cheap in like Greg's right. They will all the old heads you out because you're too expensive, and then we get some young people. Drew, you got a question? You look like you got a question.
Me? No, I'm just taking in the wisdom.
Oh, okay.
No!
That's true.
The
Think
cats
about
that
it.
don't know, Keegan and Jose too, or Anna. I'm sure y'all have any questions? Y'all have any thoughts on this? No is cool too.
Actually, I do have a question. I just remembered now. It's about when you're looking into stepping into the negotiation and you don't know exactly who your client is in terms of like what is their budget. I think I've seen that meme a few times of just like, oh, what is your price? What is your budget? And then you stay there like, what's going on, you know? I
Oh,
want to know what's going on.
that's my favorite dance to do because what I try to do is ask them their budget first. But sometimes it doesn't work because, I have another really good negotiator on the phone or on the Zoom, whatever. And so I always go like if they say, "What's the price?" I was like, "Oh, what's your budget?" Because their budget might be $50,000. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, like what's your budget like? And usually if you have a good negotiator, they just kind of like, "Oh, well, what's your price?" Like, and you just do that thing. And then what I usually say is, you know what I'll do is I'll email you a one sheet with everything you need to know on it, and then you just let me know if that fits within your budget. And so that way we can be flexible because sometimes you give a person a price on the phone, they don't have time to think about it, and they're just like, no, you know, no, no, and they just like that's the first thing they want to say. That's too much or da da da. Da. But if you give them a one sheet with beautiful pictures and like videos and like other people experiencing and smiling and they're like, oh man, this looks pretty cool actually. Like, let me see if I can find the money if they don't have it in their budget. That seems to work well. But I like to get to know a fast no. Like if it's no, like let's get to it right away, because then you can try to figure out why is it a no. You know what I mean? Versus being on the phone just talking about your program or whatever you're trying to sell and then they're gonna say no anyway. Like I want to get to know within the first 5 minutes because it was like, oh no, okay, why? Like what is it? How can we get on the same side of the table here? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that you need to get to a yes?
Hmm.
Like, what would bring you value? Like, what problem? Like, I often ask people on the phone, like, what problem are you trying to solve? Because my all I'm trying to do is help you solve your problem. If your problem isn't like bringing music to kids, then I need to point you in the direction of someone else to help you solve your problem, which I often do. Oh, you need a clarinet player instead? Oh, call Gregory Agier. You need a brass band? Oh, call. This is who you need to call. Like we shouldn't be on the phone right now. But if you ever need some kids, some this thing that I'm doing, give me a ring or point them somebody in my direction.
I like what you said too about underselling, and that's another part of the equation too, which is interesting. Is like, yeah, what happens when you say like, "Hey, my band," like for wedding gigs, I get hit up for wedding gigs all the time, and you know, yeah, it's a trio's $500, and then their first reaction is like, "Oh my God, that's so cheap," and you're like, "Oh shit." So yeah, a lot of times, like again, like when I'm asking for a gig, if a client reaches out to me, you know, again, go back to my original rule. Always set a price that you're comfortable with, knowing that the other band got paid 5 times as much or whatever it is. You always just have to make sure that you're getting what you feel you deserve. And or you're getting something else out of it, right? Always, that's always my number one rule. But at the same time, like if someone says, "Hey, I'm going to hire you for a wedding, and we're or Chuck E. Cheese is coming to mind, but I don't know, like we're holding the wedding at this really like not fancy place, and I'll ask them questions. Where is your wedding? What time is it? What day of the week is it? Who's catering it? Even like random stuff like that. Who else have you reached out to? And like those things will kind of give me subtle like notices of like what the budget is. What are they thinking about doing? And maybe after that, I'm like, oh, these people don't maybe don't have a lot of money, or look are not really trying to spend a lot of money. So I might come up with like the price that I want to take that's for like maybe a lower budget situation. But if someone calls me and they're like, "Hey, I got this wedding at the St. Louis Cathedral. We have it rented for the day. I want you to we got Trombone Shorty playing the after party, and it's being catered by, Gordon Ramsay and blah, blah, blah." I'm like, okay, yeah, it's going to cost you like $15,000 for my trio to play. And what's interesting too about prices, and this is all just stuff you learn along the way. When I'm going to use the term wealthy people very loosely here, but with people who have a lot of money, they don't want to hire a $500 band, right? They don't like if you have a lot of money, they don't want to buy a $20 cake for their party. They want to buy something really nice. And sometimes like the price you can like someone told me this a long time ago. It's like if you just start taking $50 gigs, people are only going to call you for $50 gigs. And all of a sudden it's like, let's say, Greg, metaphorical Greg or whatever, just some other young clarinet player. I got a gig at the Maison. I can't call Greg. Greg's not going to take the gig because Greg only plays $800 gigs. But then one day, so they're going to call the young musician or someone else, the person who plays the $50 gigs, the person who played at the club the last night. But then all of a sudden, a lot of times, then they get that $1,000 gig at a jazz festival. They're like, "Oh man, I got the budget for Greg," you know? And so money is just like this whole thing is an interesting thing. And, I don't really have like a one size fits all answer for any of these situations. And these are all like just experiences that you're going to encounter on the way. But I just feel like, yeah, the solid rules, like just take what you feel you deserve and just know that whatever it is that you agreed to, it's important to honor your agreement, whatever you agree to, and just be comfortable knowing that the person next to you might have taken the same deal for less. They might have taken the same deal for more. So you got to advocate for what you can live with and what you feel is right for you all the time.
Yeah, one other thing outside of money that you can negotiate, especially for drummers or people who check things when they're traveling, uh, check baggage fees. You can negotiate with band leaders. I mean, hopefully you'll get them to just pay everything because that adds up. If you're on a tour and you're flying every day or every other day, like that's gonna add up quick. That 30 or $50 you gotta pay to check your luggage. And then also like things like hotels. This hasn't happened to me in a very long time, but sometimes band leaders want you to share a hotel room, which is like, you should talk about that beforehand so that you know what your living conditions will be when you're on tours and stuff. So, there's a lot of things to talk about. And like Greg said, like always, 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 always get it in writing so that you're not surprised and they're just like, what do you mean? Like, because when you're out here and you're supposed to be out here for 2 weeks or a month or six, you're just out here. Like you're just gonna be suffering along the way, upset the whole time. And music is fun, and the more comfortable it is, the better. So don't be afraid to negotiate those things. Especially the luggage that really will add up on you real
Yeah, you
quick.
got to pay $50 a flight and you're flying every day. That's not fair. Because me, I got my clarinet in my backpack, and you're checking your bags, extra bags every day. So that's like
Right.
$50 down a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those types of things.
Well, maybe what we'll do is this. How about this? Let's wrap up the call, and if anyone wants to hang and ask a question off the recording, we can do that in just a second if anyone wants to talk.
Yeah. Well, Keegan just wrote, what terms and conditions should we make sure are included in a contract? Whose responsibility should it be to provide a contract? I've had it both ways where I have provided a contract and the venue yeah. So as far as providing a contract, usually what happens is we just have a discussion like, okay, do you want me to send a contract or are you going to send me a contract? If you feel more comfortable to send your contract, it's going to have all your stuff in it and you'll know it's right. I would just do that because if they send you a contract and you need to make changes, that's more time because now you got to read it. You know your contract is cool and it works in your favor, and they know their contract is cool and it works in their favor. Usually venues 100% of the time send the contract. Like I would say 99% of the time the venue is going to be like, all right, here's our contract. Your job is to review the contract and make sure that you 1000% agree with all the terms.
Yeah, festivals, all that kind of stuff will have their own contract without a doubt.
Yeah. And so, it's gonna be reviewed by their lawyer and it's gonna be in their favor. And so you need to make sure you get it to your lawyer and have your lawyer review it so that it's in your favor. And if you do not have a lawyer, this is not legal advice, then try to use an AI of some sort to at least tell you what it means. Like, what does all of this mean? It can at least do that. And then you'll have a better idea of if it's working out for you or not.
Yeah, and just again, like too, with I think all of us, if you all want, we have a previous masterclass called 10 Essential Items for Musicians, and we have a gig agreement template in there that y'all can use. So it's important for all of us to also have gig agreement templates that outline just super briefly, like the date of the gig, what time the gig starts, what time the gig ends, how long you're expected to play, like literally what time, like let's say I'm being hired for a wedding on Saturday night. The contract will say gig on October 20th, Saturday night, 7 p.m. through 10 p.m. Load in time will be from 5 to 6 p.m. I am responsible. It'll outline who's responsible for bringing the sound equipment, what time the band will have breaks, put the break times in there. Because a lot of times the partying starts happening and they're all dancing and all of a sudden they're like, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. And you're like, no, 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 no. We got it in writing right here. It says we're taking a break from 8 to 8:30. No questions asked. Like have everything in writing. Because when people are like liquored up at these parties, they're not going to want to hear it. I can also tell you a horrible wedding story that I had heard one time. But also you can put if the client is responsible for feeding you, right? A lot of times at parties, it's normal for the musicians to be able to have drinks and eat the food. Sometimes it's not. You can include that in your gig agreement and you can be upfront about it. Hey, when we play parties that are 3 hours long, we're expected to have meals catered by the client. You can also talk about, like the loadout. Like you need to also discuss, like if the gig ends at 10, but they don't want you to break down the equipment until midnight, you need to know that, right? You need to know like at 10 o'clock, we're loading the F out of here and we're going home. And I don't care if we got to roll the bass amp as the cake is being cut or something like that, we're rolling it out of here, dude. There was also a stipulation about playing outside. This is a story I heard a long time ago from some friends of mine. And it was a wintertime thing. And they had a stipulation that said, if we play outside, we will not play outside if the temperature goes below 55 degrees. And if the temperature goes below 55 degrees, we need to be moved inside to play. We'll keep playing, but we got to be inside. And that particular day, it was like 35 degrees. They weren't able to get them inside. And they literally did not play the gig. And there was mutiny. There was like legal action, all this kind of stuff. But they had a contract that said in the contract, we will not play if these circumstances are not met. So again, like just really get everything in writing. And I've had situations too, like where a jazz festival have reached out to me and said, hey, you can play on Saturday and we'll pay you this amount of money. Well, I hit them back and I was like, look, we're going to need a little bit more money because I need to buy flights and I'm going to need to buy an extra hotel room. is that possible? And they gave me another $1,000. Don't be afraid to negotiate. Like they might just say no, but they might say yes. So don't be afraid to ask. Be kind, be respectful. Just ask. Don't be a jerk. All right, cool. All right, so we got another call. Hey, awesome. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Well, look, we'll wrap up the recording right here. So anyways, Darian, I want to thank you so much for being part of this, and thank y'all very much for hanging today. My name is Gregory Ajid. We're here with Second Line Arts, and if you guys want to make a donation to Second Line Arts Collective, please visit our website. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and donations are tax deductible. But thanks for hanging for the negotiation masterclass, and we'll catch you all next time. Peace.